Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. Central America Stability and Instability. http ntvforex.com News ID 3224C6 7/20/20 29:30-24 am. Most of Central America south of Mexico was part of Capitania General de Guatemala during the colonial period, and after independence was succeeded by the Republic of Federal de Centro America. This split into today's states in 1841. Belize is an exception. It was settled mostly by ex-slaves from the English-speaking Caribbean. In 2004 the Central American Free Trade Agreement was signed, which effectively extends NAFTA to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic. Zonas francas are a major feature of the economies of the region. These are free ports where inputs can be imported without passing through customs and the finished goods re-export. Countries benefit from the jobs they create. Remittances from overseas workers, particularly in the U.S., are very significant in balancing the current accounts to make up for deficits in goods trade. In the post-1945 period, the U.S. interfered regularly in the affairs of the states of Central America and the Caribbean, as it viewed this region as its backyard and was sensitive to perceived external penetration. Thus the U.S. regularly backed reactionary right-wing regimes which didn't allow normal political development with opposition driven underground. The region was host to several low-level civil wars in the 1960s and 70s. In 1979 there was a break though in Nicaragua, where the Sandinistas succeeded in overthrowing the Somoza dictatorship. The U.S. leaned on its neighbors, mostly Honduras, to host the armed opposition to the Sandinista regime, the Contras, and this, in turn, caused the Sandinistas to ask the USSR and Cuba for support. Thus U.S. intervention became a self-fulfilling prophecy where each action on its part provoked a counter-reaction. Nicaragua, then, provided support to the armed rebellions in each of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, such that in the 1980s all of the region's civil wars were interrelated. It was only in 1992, with the signing of the Chapultepec Accords, that the series of interrelated conflicts in the region was brought to an end. This was only possible because the Cold War between the US and the USSR had effectively ended 2 years previously, and the US was prepared to take a more tolerant attitude. If we look at the four economies of the region since 1996, we have the following. It can be seen that growth has been modest but reasonably steady between 2% and 4% PA, except for a dip in 2009 coinciding with the world recession. In the last 2 years Nicaragua has diverged from the other countries and entered a downturn due to the political crisis there. If we look at the homicide rates we get, it can be seen that for Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador the homicide rate is between 30 and 60 per 100,000 population, and for Nicaragua it is somewhat lower. Just to put these figures in context, the homicide rate for the USA is about 5 per 100,000, and in France, which could be considered representative of the EU, it is slightly above 1 per 100,000. Thus Central America has homicide rates that are barely below the levels of full-scale armed conflict, and much of this may be attributed to the legacy of the civil wars in the 1980s and the proliferation of small arms in the region. What is remarkable is that the economic management of the countries is, in general, competent, with low inflation and government borrowing, and the scores on the United Nations Human Development Index continue to improve. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.